Today's guest got his second business to $11 million in 2 years after starting the company, sold it, and is now obsessed with very attainable, very profitable local marketing hacks and operations. We talk about how he got his early customers, how to do local SEO, the things that matter, local newsletters, which are crazy, they're so easy to grow and so profitable. We talk about popping off huge businesses using Reddit and Quora, and Instagram and TikTok marketing. This is a great episode. It is filled with actionable marketing stories and ideas. I enjoyed recording it. I think you're going to like it. Here it goes. You're an accomplished dude. Can I just hear like quick rundown of how cool you are?
Quick, very, very quick rundown. Worked in the corporate healthcare world for a number of years. 5 years ago, decided I'm going to go out on my own. I got into entrepreneurship through acquisition. I bought a medical billing company. I then started up a home health and hospice from scratch.
How did you make the initial money to buy that first company?
So I'm the child of a Colombian drug lord, and that's how we wash our money. I'm just kidding. That was a joke. You didn't even laugh. You were like,
well, I was like, no, I was thinking like, oh, this is great content.
It is great content. No, so the SBA is a freaking amazing thing. You only need 10% down, and in some instances you need 5% down. So I already had some cash, and then we sold our house, and so we had low 6 figures worth of access to capital, and we ended up using that money as a down payment.
Wow.
On buying those businesses.
Wow.
And then on the business,
how much of a risk would you say that was when you actually bought those businesses?
Dude, that is such a freaking hard question. Like, for me as a risk, I would say it was a very, very low risk. Generally speaking, how risky was it? I mean, depending on how much experience you have, it could have been a coin flip, right? Like, if you don't know what you're buying, then you are at the mercy of whoever the seller is and whether or not they actually did a good enough job to have an enterprise that self-perpetuates, right? Like, once they're removed from it. So if you don't know what you're doing, you're just really hoping that they built something that can actually self-sustain. In this instance, I had experience and it was self-sustaining, so it wasn't, in my mind, it wasn't a risk. At the time, though, it was during COVID. It was May of 2020. And so they didn't know what was going to happen, right?
You also had a lot of information into the business as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot of due diligence, but also I had worked in the healthcare space for a period of time. And this is one thing I say to people. I think the easiest and safest way to get into entrepreneurship is to build an agency around a specific skill set that you have. There's not much risk. You're not buying anything. And you can grow or shrink, relative to how good your skill set is. So I think that's the safest way to get into entrepreneurship. The second safest way is to buy a cash flowing business that you have experience in. And that's what I did. Just because my skill set wasn't in like the startup space. And so I knew that space fairly well. And I knew how those businesses operated. I was very familiar with them. And I had a lot of experience buying and selling companies. That was my job in the corporate space, is like going in, doing due diligence, transitioning, getting the LOI, getting the purchase agreement signed. So like, I understood the deal process. And when it was my own deal, there are things that I had to learn from like the first person perspective, but I was just really well prepared to step in and actually make it work.
And what did you grow that company to? And you said you sold it?
Yeah. So there were 2 separate companies. The first company generally was just a medical billing company. We did medical billing, coding, practice management, scribe, etc. We bought that. We didn't really grow a ton. It went from about $4 million in top line revenue to $7 million in top line revenue. But the bottom line, we grew pretty significantly. I mean, we tripled the bottom line from $400,000 to $1.3 million. So that was really great. And then the other business that I started at the same time, with some partners in the skilled nursing facility space, was a home health and hospice. And we grew that from 0 to $11 million in 2 years.
Wow.
And ended up selling that.
All right. So I got to ask, so how are you getting customers and visibility for that? Like, how do people find out about you? How did you close people? Yeah.
So the crazy thing about healthcare is it is incredibly old school. 90% of the business that you get is from people going out to doctors' offices or hospitals or facilities, building relationships with people who control the discharge, and then getting those patients. It's freaking crazy to me, but that's the way that it works. People of our generation are just now getting to the place where mom and dad are getting really sick, or old, or need care. And so we might go to Google. We might go and say, hey, best care facility or best home health and hospice agency. But the generations older than us, they're not typically doing that. They're just trusting the physician, or they're trusting the facility that their mom or grandma or aunt are at, and then they're going with that recommendation. So for the most part, it's like old school, boots on the ground, knocking doors, building relationships, meeting physicians. It's only now starting to shift to the digital phase where you can pay for an ad, or you can optimize your ranking or ratings, and it's very different.
I'm curious. So when you started that business, you had a bunch of pre-existing connections already.
So I moved up to an area where the skilled nursing facility partners that I had owned some skilled nursing facilities, and the whole idea behind that was, let's leverage their patient flow into a company. It actually didn't work out that way, to be honest with you. We only ever captured less than 30% of their patients. We grew significantly outside of their patient population. And in healthcare, again, it's a weird space. If you have the capacity, the patients come, because it is very supply constrained, especially after COVID. There's just a backlog of people looking for services. So if you could attract and retain talent, you were going to grow. And that's really what I focused on, was making sure that we had a culture within the organization that was attracting people, where people wanted to come and work. They were happy. They felt like they were valued and taken care of. And then if we could retain those people, we knew that we were going to grow. And so I really focused on the culture and the people side of things.
Were you like out meeting people all the time, or you just didn't have to focus on that at all?
I mean, you still have you have to focus on the relationships, right? Because that's the crazy thing about. It's not the crazy thing. Home health and hospice is where I was. You can grow or shrink as big or small relative to your competition. Like hospitals, skilled nursing facilities, physical therapy clinics, they have a certain number of beds. And so it's almost like a regulated monopoly, where if somebody wants to come and increase the supply, they've got to build a new facility that can house these people, right? Whereas home health and hospice, if I want to increase my capacity, or if another entrant enters the market, all of a sudden the pie stays the same or even grows a little bit, but the piece of the pie allocated to each individual competitor shrinks. So you can grow, and you could take up a bunch of market share, or you could lose a bunch of market share relative to other people. And so in that space, it is really, really important that you are going out and meeting with a lot of the decision makers. Like, even though you have the capacity, if you aren't also developing the relationships upstream, you're just in a really, really tough spot, because you're not getting the patients that you should be.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think we have an ed tech business, and I think education is somewhat similar to health. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But it's like you have these like big decision makers who will be responsible for thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, and they make purchase orders that are worth a lot of money. And and we funny enough, we get that through SEO, and we'll find these keywords called bottom of funnel keywords that are like search volume a month is like 0 to 10 searches a month, but it's so bottom of funnel, it's so purchase intent that it's, first of all, it's overlooked because the volume is really low, but it's so purchase intent that the people who land on these pages are very qualified. And we don't even have to do like a lot of sweet talking or anything, because like they are looking for what we are providing, Googling what we are providing, trying to find a brand that's going to give it to them. But
I have a business partner, and his name's Chris Koerner. We've been best friends for 20 years. Chris has never had a job ever. Like, and when I say job, I mean like W-2, right? Like through college, after college, he's only ever started businesses and made money off of his own businesses, which it just boggles my mind. I didn't get into entrepreneurship until 5 years ago. And so I have a very different perspective. I came up in a corporate setting. I kind of understand how traditional things flow, et cetera. So this space, like the digital space, marketing, SEO, et cetera, is kind of new to me. And it's been fun over the last year. I sold a bunch of my companies. And so the last year I've been just like figuring out what I'm going to do next. And I get really excited about the convergence of local search, local marketing, and sweaty businesses. And I'll throw healthcare in there as well, right? Because healthcare is kind of like this traditional business. And I mean, we see this in the changes that are happening right now. Local search in particular is just becoming so much more prevalent. And so when you talk about these educators, right, and you're targeting long tail keywords and making sure that you have what you need in order to reach them. I think the same thing is happening in the local space as well. And anyways, I just think it's a really cool dynamic.
Yeah, local SEO is huge. Always been huge. It's yeah, local SEO, and actually now it's not just Google. It's TikTok, especially Instagram. I mean, I travel all the time. I'm looking for places, and I'm starting my search. It depends on the place, but I'm sometimes on TikTok, sometimes on Google Maps, actually IG all the time.
Yeah. Dude, I was gonna say Google Maps. This blows my mind. There's like 1 billion monthly active users of Google Maps.
It's a great product.
I think of Google as like a traditional, oh, this is where I see ads, right? I search for something, and then whether SEO pops it up or there's a paid ad popping up, I think of ads as being really beneficial in that space. But Google Maps, Google Business Profile now, it's insane to me how much opportunity there is in that space relative to the other spaces, because it hasn't been leveraged nearly as much as those other spaces. And so then when you talk about Snapchat, TikTok, Instagram, where you have local or micro influencers, I'm very, very bullish on local marketing and local
digital
marketing.
I want to ask, what's some of the craziest marketing things you're seeing with local? Like some crazy stories that you can share that you've seen, and it's just blowing your mind.
First story, Google Business Profile. Used to be GMB, it's now Google Business Profile. And if you don't know what that is, anytime that you either search on Google or you search on Google Maps, the thing that pops up is the Google Business Profile. It's like the star ranking, or the star rating. It's their hours of operation. It'll have a website. Many restaurants now have like their menus listed on there. You can do a bunch to optimize it. But there are businesses popping up around helping people optimize their Google Business Profiles. I had a guy on my podcast. He took a business from like $400,000 a year to $3 million a year just by optimizing their Google Business Profile, which is insane to me. And you'll see these maps. I'm sure your listeners have seen these maps where it's like, this is where you rank before optimizing your Google Business Profile. And Google's really, really good about ranking you, within certain zip codes. And so it'll show you in the map all of these little circles and where you rank, 1 through 100, however many competitors there are in there. And then once you optimize, it'll show you where you rank 1 through 100. And you really want to be in the top 5 in any one of those locations. But just by optimizing that, they went from $400,000 a year to like $3 million a year in revenue.
Do you know what was done?
I don't know the specific business, but I know what he does in order to get it optimized. The first thing, and this is crazy to me, 40% of businesses have never even completed the Google Business Profile.
Wow.
Yeah. They've never even put in their hours of operation or their website or their phone number, any of that stuff. So like, that's the first thing that they look at is like, okay, is there a business in this local area? And if they are, have they actually put the information?
When you're saying that, I'm just like thinking, cause like I travel so much and I look on Google Maps, and half of the time, maybe even more, I'll see incomplete listings that are still ranking just because they use the right keywords. But and they're and then when you actually complete it and you get reviews, okay, I'll let you finish. Sorry, this is getting me hyped.
No. That's what's crazy to me is like they'll spend $5, $10, maybe even more, $15,000 on creating their website. So they get a beautiful website, and then they'll also spend that money on optimizing the website, paying someone to do SEO. Right? They have all the keywords, everything's funneling back. Maybe they're even creating content for their website. Like, so let's say they're sophisticated, but then they spend no money, no marketing dollars on optimizing their Google Business Profile, which 1 billion monthly active users actually see. And they're just leaving so much on the table because they're kind of forgetting the third leg of this 3-legged stool. So crazy. I'm in agreement with you.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Just fill out the freaking Google Business Profile. The second thing is, within the profile, you can actually make posts every single week, which I didn't know. But you can say like, oh, hey, we're having a fundraiser, or check out this article of a customer that we had, or look at this local company that invested in us, like whatever it is. And so if you're uploading and updating the essentially social media posts on your Google Business Profile, it makes it more likely that people are going to actively engage with you. The third thing he optimizes for are reviews. Reviews are incredibly important. I think it's something like 95% of people look at reviews of companies before they make a purchasing decision or while making a purchasing decision. And if you don't have reviews, you're kind of screwed. So in optimizing your Google business profile, you need to make sure that you have reviews that are being left by people. So you can have a bunch of different things. You can have mailers, you can have email follow-up, text follow-up, et cetera, just to remind people to leave you a 5-star review. Those are 3 of the things. There's a bunch of other things that you can do, but I mean, those are so simple and so easy that almost anybody can do it. And like I said, 40% of people just haven't even filled out their profile.
Yeah. That's a huge statistic. And you're so right. It's so often overlooked. I remember a few years ago, actually, I was sitting in a cafe in Warsaw, and I was reading articles about Google Business Profile SEO and how like it was just completely underutilized. And I made a note to myself to just go hard doing it. And then I got distracted by like I like the next day I was going like really viral on TikTok, and I just completely forgot it. But yeah, like, and now you're just reminding me, oh yeah, there's so many people there. And there's so much opportunity.
All right. I pulled up this list because I was like, I should actually say it. These are just not even all of the attributes, but a big list of attributes on Google Business Profile. You can upload photos, you can upload maps, so you need to put your business name, your website, directions, your phone number, your star rating. You can have an editorial summary, which is essentially just a summary of what your business is. You can have your hours of operation, your phone number. You can have products offered. Oh, I forgot about this. You can have surveys. You can have specials that are being run. You can have updates. You can have a Q&A section, like an FAQ section, essentially added to your Google Business Profile. So like there's a million things that you can have optimized so that when you're, somebody's searching on Google Maps and they click into it, all of a sudden there's a ton of information for them to interact with. And it just makes the purchasing decision much more likely because there's trust, there's credibility, like in anything. Like that's what you're trying to do anytime you're marketing is build trust with somebody enough to get them to make a purchasing decision.
And reviews aside, just having a fully filled out profile helps you rank a lot better. Reviews are the most important thing by far, but like having a fully filled out profile just makes it so much easier.
Totally.
What else do you have?
Okay, local stuff. And this isn't traditional marketing, but I'm just really obsessed with it. How familiar are you with the newsletter game?
I would say I know a decent amount.
You probably know more than me. So the stuff I'm going to explain to you are like, you'll be like, that was right. That was wrong. You can call me out. That's okay. I won't get offended. I love the newsletter game because the newsletter game allows you to control your access to your audience. Almost everything else requires you to rely on another platform. So if you have a large social media following, for example, Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, whatever, they could change their algorithm and all of a sudden you don't have the same amount of reach that you had in the past. Google can come out and say, you know what? Actually, we're going to start answering questions with artificial intelligence. And what happens to all of the SEO that you've been investing in for a long period of time? People don't even, scroll down to see your page anymore because now Google is answering that. And unless you're ranking in the answer, unless Google is actually pulling from your work in order to have the answer with AI, you don't really get attribution and it, impacts you. So changes to platforms are just significant, but newsletters allow you to directly interact with your customer one-to-one. And I've become obsessed with local newsletters in particular. Couple examples. There's a guy that I spoke with. He lives in Annapolis, Maryland. Annapolis has 40,000 people in the city, and he has an email newsletter local that he sends every day with 20,000 subscribers on it. So half the population of this town that he lives in, he has subscribed to his local newsletter. I want you to guess how much revenue he generates a year off of that newsletter.
I can't even. I would have to know how much money is in that city. But
okay, that's fine.
I'm sure
$320,000 a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Off of 20,000 subs in a city of 40,000 people.
How did he get? So this is what I want to know. I want to know how he grew the newsletter.
I will tell you that in a second.
Okay.
So again, crazy thing to me. You build this newsletter, you make $320,000 a year. But I think there's a huge opportunity for businesses who are already collecting users' information, emails, to start their own newsletters to keep engagement active and alive. And like, this is nothing new, right? Like, you should always be keeping your customers warm. You should always have an engagement program with your customers. But the way that he did it in particular was mainly through Facebook and Google Ads. I would say primarily Facebook, but also Google Ads. And the cost to acquire a subscriber over that period of time was on average $2. So he spends $40,000 to acquire 20,000 customers that he's now generating $300,000, $320,000 a year off of. But every single day, those people are receiving emails from him. So he's also just recently bought a porta potty business. He's looking at some other businesses to buy. Where do you think he's going to market to?
Right.
He's going to market to the people on his newsletter, right? Like all of a sudden he's created the distribution channel, and now he can leverage the distribution channel into growing his businesses, which I just think is fascinating.
So you said it was search ads and Facebook ads. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you know like what the CTA was, like, or what the creative was, if it was Facebook, or like what he was writing, or what the landing page was like?
Dude, see, this is where I start getting out of my depth, because like now you're asking questions that I don't know the answer to. From my understanding of what he did, he would go to local Facebook groups within Annapolis, or he would geofence it, right? He would be like, okay, I only want to target these people who live in Annapolis. And he was very clearly positioning himself as the local newsletter. So this wasn't a national company that hadn't, the Fox affiliate in Annapolis or the CBS affiliate in Annapolis. Was like, nope, this is the Scoop. We're in Annapolis. We're locally owned and operated. It might
also just been that there wasn't a lot of competition, and it was just very easy for him. You just, like you said, he just positioned himself as the local newsletter. Yeah. And it's like, yeah.
And in a city of a city of 40,000 people, I think you can be everything to everybody. But if you go to bigger markets, you kind of need to niche down into one of three areas. You need to be either geographic focused. Let's take New York City for an example, right?
Yeah.
You can niche down on geography. So you could say like, all right, I'm only going to focus on this borough, or I'm only going to focus on this part of Manhattan. Hell's Kitchen is my newsletter. So you can focus on geography. You can focus on topic. So you're like, I'm going to be the food guy. I'm going to be the travel guy. I'm going to be the sports guy, whatever. Or you can focus on demographic. All right, I'm going to target, mid-30s males, or I'm going to target millennial moms, whatever it is. And so, you can even have a newsletter that has a bunch of overlap of those things. But the first thing you have to do, I think, is niche down within those markets. And then you can start really focusing in on acquiring customers through paid acquisition or paid channels. For him, though, I think it was easy to be everything to everybody because there was nobody in his market doing the local newsletter. And there are a ton of opportunities, I think, in many, many cities to do a local newsletter, not just to make money. I mean, that's a cool secondary benefit of it, but as a means of creating your own channel of distribution.
Right.
And that's really, the owning your channel of distribution is really a big reason why Chris and I in particular have gone really heavy on content, is because now we have this channel of distribution. We don't know exactly how we're going to monetize. We don't know exactly what we're going to do with it, but we know it gives us optionality. And so we can kind of decide how and when we're going to pull the levers. But I think owning your channel of distribution is just incredibly valuable.
Yeah. Dude, I couldn't agree more. Also, I think what's cool is when you grow a big audience, just talking about whatever, and I talk about this all the time on my show, just talking about whatever you want to talk about, and you just do that every day, and naturally your audience grows. Your audience will tell you what they want from you. Like they will make it easy for you to monetize them. They will say, we want this, or you will get the same questions all the time, and then you can productize that. And so
what I think it's interesting. Like you asked the question, like, okay, what did the landing page look like? What was the CTA? What were all these other things? Which is awesome that you think that way. Chris thinks that way as well. I think that's why you two have been successful in growing social media, because you're always thinking about like, okay, I'm not just putting out this content, but I'm also thinking about what's the CTA? How do I get them to
By the way, for people listening, Chris is Chris Koerner. I talk about him all the time on the show. And what's Chris's Instagram?
Yeah, so the Koerner office. Yeah, I think he's got 300,000 followers on Instagram now. 60,000.
He talked with me before he started to get advice. Yeah. In like February, he had no people, and now he's at 300,000. It's such an amazing,
dude. Okay, so if you look at all social platforms, and I'm going to include Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. All right, let's just say those 5. At the beginning of the year, he had 50,000 followers on Twitter. That was it. Today, he has 650,000 followers across all of those platforms.
Yeah.
Which
crazy.
is just,
It's crazy.
It's nuts to me. But I think it speaks to the power of somebody being maniacally and he's just that's all he does. He's just like focused on optimizing that. But B, back to you, I think you guys think a lot about what's the purpose of this? What's my call to action? How do I like best optimize? And you're like constantly iterating and tinkering with it. And that's an incredibly strong skill set. The third piece is I think he's like approachable, right? He doesn't come across as an overly engineered or overly produced guru. And I think you're the same way, right? Like you're sitting here with your handheld mic, you do reviews, like you give ideas and your stuff hits because it's like, oh, Edward's a normal dude. Like he's not trying to be something that he's not. He's not over engineering. He's not talking about taking his private flights. Like, no, he's talking about the stuff that he's passionate about and he's approachable. And I do think marketing is kind of swinging back that direction where it's becoming less produced, not over engineered. Even if it is still over engineered, but it's looking like, oh, I'm not putting any effort into this, right? Like, oh, this is just a quick thing that I threw up there. And people are really resonating with that.
You know about the more plates, more dates guy, right?
Yeah.
And how he brings like, apparently he brings like, so he's huge now. I don't even know how huge he is. He has like, what, like 2 8-figure businesses or something like that?
Something ridiculous.
Like high 8 figures. And he started with content and he travels around with the same crappy background and it's just like this like wooden background. There's an oven behind him even like no matter how luxurious he's living in, he still records with that background.
Yeah. Well, Alex Hormozy.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the dude's got a nose strip and he's in a beater and you know what I mean? That guy is a killer. He is incredibly sophisticated. Like there's a reason why he continues to make content where he looks like he's a slob, right? Chris's content is like that, right? Where Chris is incredibly sophisticated, but he's just taking a quick selfie of like, hey guys, I had this idea and But I think it like builds this level of trust with people because it's like, oh, he's just like me. He's not trying to be like something
Nick,
that he's not.
I built my early audience because I didn't really have much need for like a nice phone before I started doing social media. Like I didn't like to spend that much time on social media and like I would take pictures and the pictures were good enough. But I built my early audience on the selfie camera of an iPhone 8, making videos on TikTok. And I made the most viewed video in the world on the Silicon Valley bank collapse, shot on the selfie camera of an iPhone 8. And like tons of other viral videos just like that, editing in the TikTok app on an iPhone 8. And like
no way.
And like a 2014 MacBook Pro. And like, yeah, it does. And in fact, I haven't like, I think just when your content is the subject matter, like what are you talking about? It's really just, it's what are you talking about more so how it looks. How it looks is important, but it's honestly, things looking worse might make the content perform better because like you said, you're approachable.
Well, and it's back to those timeless things like how's your positioning? How are you framing it? What is your hook? How are you keeping people interested, right? I have a nice camera. I have some lights. Cool. I look good, but I might sound like a freaking moron or I might have terrible ideas, right? People might be listening to me like, I don't know that this guy knows what he's talking about. Because they have access to so much content now, the look is important, but it's like you better know what you're talking about. You better have really good content. Otherwise, you're not going to stick out. And you have really good content. I remember when Chris first sent me your video, I want to say it was like 2 years ago, where you randomly found him. And I don't remember if it was like a profile on Bucky's or if it was a profile on Chris.
I'll tell you what happened. I meant to tell him what happened. So what's his name? Sam Parr's company, which he sold, The Hustle, made a whole Sunday profile on his Bucky's business.
That's right.
And I was sitting in the Soho House in Barcelona waiting for my flight because I had like some time before my flight. And I was sitting there just catching up on the Hustle newsletters. And I read this one and I'm like, that is great subject matter. I'm going to turn this into a video. And so I took my flight. I got to my new place and then I made that video. And it popped off.
And like, When was that? Was that 2 years ago? A year ago?
It was, I think, a year and a half ago.
Okay, a year and a half ago. Like Chris sent it to me right away, and he's like, "Isn't this freaking rad? Like somebody did this profile on me," and so like ever since then, obviously you've been in his orbit where he's just like, "Oh, I know who Edward is," but that was not overly over engineered. That was not overproduced. Like it was just a quick recap.
Dude, that was
very easy
selfie
summary.
camera of an iPhone 8.
Yeah, I want to say you were even like looking down. I can't remember exactly what the video was, but I remember watching the video and being like, "This guy, how many views?
Yeah. Right.
Wait, this guy has a channel?" Just because it was new. It wasn't the same visual stuff that you'd see over and over and over again. And I think that resonates with people because it's like, oh, okay, this guy's being real. He's authentic. Like we're swinging back towards authenticity as a selling mechanism.
Yeah.
So I think that's why I like the local newsletters in particular, is because it's like, oh, so-and-so is putting on this newsletter. I know him. He goes about town. It can be a really, really good business.
Yeah, that's a great insight. The local newsletter is really smart.
I also love, and this is again with Chris, again, like my background is like buying, rolling up, operationalizing businesses. Chris is like the 0 to 0.25. I wouldn't even say Chris is 0 to 1. Chris is like 0 to 0.25. He loves the ideation and validation phase. He does not like operationalizing it or scaling. Like he just hates that stuff. So he just loves to like test it. Is there something here? And then he hands it off. That's why I think his content does so well, is because he's just constantly an idea machine and handing things off. But I am just obsessed with the way that Chris has been doing this for the last 10, 15 years. It started with Reddit and Quora, where he would answer questions. And if people don't know what Quora is, I'm sure people know what Quora is. But he was like perfecting his writing skills over time. And with each subsequent business that he launched, he would use those as testing grounds. He would post about his business and he would just see what the reaction was.
Wow.
So I love using these underutilized source channels to not just test, but also launch. And we had a business that we launched in October 2021 where it was at the tail end of the bull market with crypto. Chris and I had both really wanted to get into crypto mining. And so in July, he's like, "Hey, you want to buy a crypto miner with me?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, cool." So we buy 2 crypto miners, Bitcoin miners. And for those who don't know, Bitcoin is mined. It's really treated as a finite resource. It takes compute power, hash power, as they call it, to get a Bitcoin extracted. I won't go into the nitty gritty of it, but anyways, so we bought this computer, this machine, to mine Bitcoin. And quickly we realized, oh crap, you can only fit like one of these in your house. They draw so much freaking power. So we were like, well, where can we place it? Well, there was nothing. There was nowhere you could place it. And there was really no offering for retail miners. There was offering for people who had like a ton of miners that they could place. It was like a commercial endeavor, but if somebody had like 1 or 2 miners that they wanted to place, couldn't do it. So what does Chris do? Chris goes and posts to Reddit. He's like, "Hey, did anybody know where this could be, where we could place these miners?" Nobody has any answers for him. So like, I think there's something here. So we decide to buy a facility that had enough power so that we could host our own miners, but it had too much power. So we thought, well, why don't we try to sublease the space? So what do? Chris goes and posts on Reddit, and he always does it in the ethical bait and switch, where he's like, not the business posting about it, but like, "Hey, a friend of mine found out about this facility that has some power." Some might call it lying, others call it marketing, but he posts about it and he just gets all of this inbound. And so before we even bought the facility, we had sold out hosting space.
Wow.
To pay for it. And then,
so wait, was he taking calls with these people, or like, and he was actually getting them to pay before like he actually got the money in hand?
We did not have the money in hand before we closed,
Mm-hmm.
but we did have the money within like 2 weeks of closing, because they're like, I probably didn't do a great job of explaining. So when you buy a miner, MINER, not MINOR, clear distinction there. When you buy a miner, it usually takes 2 weeks for that to ship from overseas. And so there was this lag time between when people were placing the purchase of the miner and then when it was actually plugging in. And so once it actually got to the facility and they were plugging in is when we would take their deposits.
Mhm.
So there was kind of like a 2-week lag. But before the 2-week lag, before the 2 weeks of when they're plugging in, they were buying the miners. And that to me was the craziest 3 months of our life. We launched that business October 1st. And within the first 3 months, we had generated $10.5 million of sales and like $1 million of profit because of this Reddit strategy of like, hey guys, there's this facility, drums up a bunch of interest. And Chris is really, really good about writing and making something go viral. We just generated a bunch of interest and publicity. And so we sold a bunch of miners, and then we were able to place those miners, and it launched this business that we still have to this day where we sell crypto mining hardware.
Wow, that's sick. So I just want to understand better. So you bought these things before you actually had like the money from sales, but you had people saying, if you do this, we will give you money.
Both of those things. So we had in the very beginning, which was like I said, Chris really loves the ideation and validation phase. So July and August.
I'm just trying. You validated with people saying we are interested, but not actually giving you money, right?
Yes. So Chris really loves the ideation validation phase. And so July and August was when we started posting about this and like, I wonder if there's something here. So we started getting all this inbound of people who were saying, yeah, I need hosting needs as well. And if you find something, we'd love for you to tell us about that. So quickly there was an obvious need for hosting. So we started looking for facilities that could actually handle the power capacity. And we found a facility that was for sale. And we ended up getting it under contract with the idea of, hey, whatever we don't take up, we can sublease to the rest of the people. And then in September, another post comes. And this time it wasn't a, hey, my friend has space. I think it was actually like, hey, we're a business and we're launching if you're looking for space. That's then in the middle of September when people started actually saying, hey, I want this space, take my name. When you are ready to sell these miners, let me know. And so in the beginning of October is when we actually opened up sales. The question you're asking, we probably should have done and taken like deposits. We just didn't. I don't know why we didn't do that. We didn't do that. We didn't take any deposits before we actually bought the facility. We bought the facility before we had deposits. Looking back though, yeah, we probably should have taken deposits before we bought the facility, but I mean, it worked out.
It sounds like you were just hyped about the interest in the first place, and you could kind of tell like, if we build this, they will come. And you could, you could really tell. Yeah,
because there still are a ton of retail miners where they don't have 17 rigs. They might have 1 or 2 rigs, but they still want to place it somewhere because they're loud. They take a bunch of power. And so those communities exist on Reddit. And we knew that they were like, this post was viewed like 100,000 times or by 100,000 different people on Reddit. So it's like, okay, there's something here. Let's go ahead and launch it. Now that we know more about launching these businesses, there's probably some more things that we would have done to validate or generate the first dollar. But that was a crazy experience of just jumping into it. And I've never had something that's generated $10 million in the first 3 months. That was insane.
That's great. So if you do a strategy like this again, what would you do different? How would you improve it? What would you keep the same, and what would you do different?
What we've realized is that generating interest in an idea, at least for us, like for our skill set, is repeatable, easily repeatable. The thing that we have struggled with and the thing that we would focus on the next time is operationalizing it, because it's really hard when you get all that demand to say no. Even if you probably should say no, it's hard to say no because it's like, oh, these are real dollars. We'll figure it out. Oh, make it happen. Fake it till you make it, right? Like all those platitudes. But then you do it and you generate, like we did, $10 million in sales, and you don't have a CRM and you don't have a good accounting system, and you're running this business off of Google Sheets, which Google Sheets really was not meant to run $10 million businesses, right? And things just start to break. The customer experience on the back end is nowhere near where it should be. Even though on the front end, you can generate world-class levels of interest, you have to be able to operationalize it on the back end. And I think that's what we're focusing on now. Is anything that we do, we're really focusing on the front end, driving sales, being creative with how we generate interest, but then we're partnering with operators on the back end to make sure that the implementation and the fulfillment of those services is executed at a high level, because it sucks. It sucks when it doesn't go well.
Yeah. But that's a good problem to have, though. It's that you have all this business and you gotta
Yeah.
fix it. Yeah.
No, it's a great problem to have. It's still a problem, but yeah, it's a great problem.
Yeah. So you got interest with organic posting on Reddit.
And now we've done it also now with Twitter. We've done it with Instagram, and we just launched another business called Vending.com, where Chris posted something and it got 20 million views.
Yeah.
Did he tell you this story?
I mean, I saw the video.
All right.
But
well, let me tell you.
Share it. Yeah.
I'll tell you the back end story. So Chris posts this video, and it's a perfume vending machine, and they're really popular in Europe, but they're not really here in the United States. And he's like, "Isn't this a cool idea?" And it appeals to his followers who are entrepreneurs and wantrepreneurs, right? Who are just like, "Oh, that could be my side hustle. That's how I could get into this business." It ends up getting viewed 20 million times. And quickly, people start DMing him, "Where can I buy this machine?" So in the very early stages, and this is Chris, you've had enough experience, you see pattern recognition, and it's like, oh, this is going to be something. He's like, let's start collecting these people's emails and put them on a list. So we start collecting these people's emails. He sends out a type form, and we get their email, how many units they're interested in, where they live, et cetera. And over the next few weeks, all of a sudden, we have 2,500 people who are interested in buying these machines. And that represents about $50 million of interest in purchase orders. And we're like, holy crap. So we go to the manufacturer in Europe, and we are negotiating exclusivity to sell these units in the United States. And so we have North American exclusivity to sell these.
Is that why Chris did that trip when he was in Athens?
No, actually, it's not why he did that trip. We should have freaking done that trip, because we need to go to Spain now to meet with these people. But no, that was just a family trip that they had on the schedule for a really long time. So we have like all of this interest. We negotiate with the manufacturer, and we now have exclusivity to sell in North America. And September was the first month that we sold. And so August, we now have sold August, September, October. We sold $50,000 worth of units in August, 60 in September. And I think we're at 50 month to date in October, right? So like there's a ramp happening.
What's the profit on these machines?
So the way that we have it set up right now is we are strictly a sales organization. We're not doing any of the fulfillment, any maintenance, any stocking, anything is being done with the manufacturer in place. So the gross margins that we have are about 45%. And then we have administrative and sales teams on top of that. So our net margins right now, we're projecting to be between 30 and 40%.
Wow. So
yeah,
like basically it sounds like you had to do very little work. Like Chris made this video, it went viral, and then you put a type form together to collect email addresses. That probably took 5 to 15 minutes. So now you have all this interest. Am I getting it wrong, or was it like a ton of work?
No. That's not a ton of work. The next steps are, and this is why I was like, Chris is 0 to 2.5, because the next phase is where the ton of work comes. You've got 2,500 leads. It's a high ticket item. How do you close them? Well, now you got to hop on sales calls. Now you got to have a Zoom.
Okay, I want to hear about this. I want to hear about the nitty, like, because I like, I like when people make it seem really easy, but at the same time, I hate that because it misleads a lot of people. And I think it's really important to get these details, because there are people, they're also like lots of listeners are great at marketing, but they want to know more about operations and how you do this. So,
okay. So it's been a fun process because we're building the infrastructure necessary to take advantage, to like be opportunistic like this in the future, which I'm very, very bullish on. But it's been hard. It's been a lot of work. It's been hard. So we generate all these leads. They're in a type form, but the data is not super clean, right? Maybe some phone numbers are messed up. Maybe the emails aren't all correct. And maybe they have their country, but because it's an open text, maybe they spelled France wrong, or maybe they wrote France in French. I don't know how you say France in French, but whatever. So there was a lot of cleaning of the data that we needed to do in order to get it organized. So then we move it into Google Sheets. Now we got to decide on a CRM, but we've been taking all these sales calls with people and every sales call has been attended with Otter AI because we want to track all of the notes. Turns out HubSpot doesn't integrate with Otter AI. So how are we going to get all the notes from Otter AI into the CRM? So we go through this whole process. Well, we're not going to go with HubSpot. We're going to go with Go High Level. And so we're implementing Go High Level. And now we have to switch to another AI tool that can take these notes so they can upload. But now we have a manual process of uploading all of these things. And then on top of that, cool, we need to call each one of these people. So we hired a sales team. They've called all these people. How do we follow up with them? So we've set up drip campaigns where once we've called them, they now have an automated email that goes to them that follows up on.
What are you using for email marketing?
That I don't know the answer to. I don't think it's Klaviyo. What do we use? Oh, no. It's Go High Level. Yeah. We're using Go High Level. Yeah. So Go High Level. Yeah. Go High Level. You can create these drip campaigns. And so we've set up those drip campaigns depending on like their level of interest, right? Like if they're like, oh, I don't know, call me back in a month. Obviously that's different than, no, I want to buy. And so creating those different, and I don't know what the word is, but like marketing flows, marketing funnels, has been a freaking ton of work. Then on the backside, the manufacturer in Spain, they work on Barcelona time. So it's just been hard getting a hold of them and getting the information that we've needed. So we built a website, but this is new to the United States and people don't really know, well, where am I supposed to put these machines? How much do they make? How do I get them serviced? What perfume should I buy? So we're trying to get answers from the manufacturer at the same time that these customers are asking us. And as you know, time kills all deals. So we've had 2,500 leads, but we've only closed on, I want to say we're in the ballpark of like 50 units sold, but it's because it's taken us so long to educate the consumer. If this was a product where you could quickly educate the consumer, we would have sold a lot more, but it's new to the United States. They don't really know what it is. There's an education process. It's high ticket. Also, there's a lot of leads. That was one of our massive mistakes is we just sent a calendar link and it was like, hey, if you're interested in buying, click here. Well, when you have 2,500 people and many of them want 1 unit and some of them want 50 units, I don't want to take my time up with the 1 units. I want to talk to the whales who want 50 units, right? We weren't discriminating on who was booking calls with us. And so all of our time was just being taken up by kind of tire kickers. And then we missed out on following up with a lot of these whales, which we ended up doing, but it was, 2 months later at that point. So it's like all of these things that you don't really think about on the front end that really took us time to get implemented and integrated. But now we have Go High Level. Now we have a sales team. Now we have a flow. Like the type form doesn't have as many free text space. And what I'm saying is if you do a survey, you can choose either a drop down or you can choose free text. And if you do free text, that can be fine. But what happens if they're like, I live in Missouri and 4 people spell Missouri 4 different ways? It's really hard to sort the data and make decisions and assignments based on the data if it's not clean data. So we've cleaned up all of that stuff, and now it's a much.
Have you used AI? Because you can actually, you can use like a ChatGPT solution to just have a bunch of different categories, and ChatGPT figures out which category each answer goes into.
Dude, I would love any advice you have because I tried that. Like I uploaded, I uploaded these lists to ChatGPT and was like, "Hey, can you clean this data?" It wasn't great. I had to go through and do a lot of manual things, but that was just ChatGPT. I didn't use any.
Want a programmer like we did this for one of our businesses, and we just have we have daily challenges for one of our businesses, and when someone fills out a challenge, the AI figures out what category that challenge goes into, but we predefine the categories. We pick the categories.
What are you using?
We're using ChatGPT.
You're just using ChatGPT, and how is it getting the information?
It's the API. It's the API, and yeah, so we're connected to the API. Like my co-founder is the programmer, but it's actually very easy to do. Like if I gave this a day, I could figure out how to connect this with like Claude, for example. Like I could use Claude Cursor and Replit, which is like the ultimate, like you can code anything, not anything, but you can code a lot of basic things very easily with these AI solutions. And
what I've started using is, have you ever used Google Notebook?
I have, actually.
Okay, I really like Google Notebook because it doesn't hallucinate nearly as much as those other LLMs, because it's only taking the data that you're uploading to it. And so for stuff like this, I've started using the Google Notebook because it can't pull on other data. It's literally just like citing exactly what you uploaded. But I don't think it has the same level of integration that OpenAI has. Like OpenAI is a lot easier to integrate with natively than, at least from what I've seen, Google's Notebook. At least I haven't played around with it enough to know whether or not you can automate a lot of these processes. Although as agents start becoming real, I like the applications for that are going to be massive for things like this, cleaning data, assigning categories for different customers, right? Like I'm really excited about those types of things.
The thing is, it's like you want to when the AI, it's easier if you create the categories yourself. And if you ask the AI to create categories, you have to give it very specific instructions on how many categories and how different they have to be. And it can actually get a lot of those things wrong. But it is very good at placing answers within predefined categories. And so
Right.
when you have like a huge list, that's something that you can do.
I bet there are a lot of applications that could be used that people don't use just because they don't know how to set them
Oh
up.
man, yeah.
Or they think like, oh, it's going to take too much time.
I bet that's a great keyword. Clean data with AI. That's probably like such a good.
Do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Now I want you to do it and tell me
how
good it was.
I mean, I could look it up. Okay. This was a great talk. Thank you for coming on. You shared some good stuff. Where do you want people to go to check out the rest of your ecosystem?
Check out my podcast, Nickonomics, Nikonomics. You can find me on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all the fun places. But I think that's the best place to just check out my podcast.
Okay, Nickonomics.
Yeah.
Do you have any other places? Any places where you're posting?
Twitter.
Okay.
Yeah, Twitter is where I post the majority of my long form stuff.
What type of stuff are you sharing?
I share a lot more tactical, operational things. How do you buy your first business? How do you find a business off market? How do you build KPIs in your company? How do you make sure that you're communicating well with your teams? I'm a lot more operationally focused, or like buying a business focused. But those are typically the types of things that I'm sharing.
Very awesome. Any other places?
No, not yet.
All right. Nick, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me, man. This was great.
Everybody, this is episode 468 of my daily digital marketing show, The Edward Show, every day. And thank you so much if you're watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for listening, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. And I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye now.